Welcome to English Through Ideas podcast, where we learn English through powerful ideas.
Yes, welcome.
Um, Imagine arriving at a completely frozen train station, right? Where a stranger just gives this casual flick of a finger to the left or the right, and that tiny motion instantly decides whether you live or die.
It's terrifying just to picture it.
It really is. And today we are going on a deep dive into a psychiatrist's firsthand account of surviving a World War II concentration camp.
Yeah, it's an incredibly heavy setting, obviously, but what we are really exploring today is, well, it's a deep psychological theory about human motivation, and it was actually born in that darkness.
Right.
The author of this audiobook lived through just absolute horror, and he used that experience to ask this fundamental question, like, what actually keeps us going when literally everything else is taken away?
Right. And it really makes you look at your own life. Like, you have to ask, are you driven by a desire for pleasure? Is it the pursuit of power or money? Or is there this completely different engine driving human survival?
Exactly.
But to understand the psychiatrist's ultimate discovery, we really have to understand the absolute stripping away of his previous life. Because the book describes the psychology of the prisoners in phases.
Yeah, starting right at their arrival at the camp.
Exactly. There is this overwhelming shock, but it's combined with this weird psychological shield. He calls it the delusion of reprieve.
Yeah, that is a very specific state of mind. You actually often see it in condemned prisoners right before an execution.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is this sudden, completely illogical belief that maybe, just maybe at the very last second, you might be saved.
Wow.
So when the prisoners arrived on these transport trains, after days of travel in just terrible conditions, they looked out and saw other prisoners who seemed relatively okay.
Right.
And their minds immediately created a narrative to protect them. They thought, oh, maybe they will send us to a work camp. Like, maybe I will be one of the lucky ones.
You know, it reminds me of getting a terrible medical diagnosis.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Because your first instinct isn't to just accept it. Your brain says, oh, the lab must have mixed up my blood test with someone else's.
Yeah.
You simply cannot process the terrible reality all at once.
Right, the brain just rejects it.
But in the camp, that psychological shield is shattered almost immediately. Because the narrator describes the very first selection process. And it's chilling because of how casual it is.
Yeah, it's awful.
There is an SS officer standing there, looking completely relaxed, just playing a little finger game.
Yeah.
He points left or he points right.
Exactly. Just a tiny, effortless movement of a finger. And that casual gesture instantly decided the fate of every single person stepping off that train.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. About 90% of the people on the author's transport were sent to the left, which meant going directly to the gas chambers. And the author just happened to be sent to the right, to the work camp.
And for the people who went to the right, they survived, but they were stripped of everything that made them human. The author actually uses the phrase naked existence.
He does, yeah.
And he means that quite literally.
Very literally. They were stripped of their clothes, their personal belongings, they lost their names, and simply became, just a number tattooed on their skin.
Mm-hmm.
They were shaved completely bald. Think about what makes up your identity right now. Your job title, your clothes, your hairstyle, the things you own.
Yeah, everything we use to show who we are.
Exactly. And when every single one of those external markers is violently taken away, what is left? You are reduced to a completely naked existence, just a body trying to breathe.
Which brings us to the second phase of the camp psychology. Because after that initial shock wears off and the reality of this naked existence sets in, the mind shifts into apathy.
Yes, a profound apathy.
It's set in as a complete blunting of all emotion, where seeing terrible things barely registered anymore. The author shares this really haunting example.
Oh, with the soup.
Yes. He was in a hut with sick patients, holding a bowl of watery soup. And a man had just died right there in the room. And the author just sat there sipping his soup, watching the dead body being dragged up the steps.
Bumping against the stairs right next to him.
Right next to him.
And he felt absolutely nothing. No disgust, no horror, no moral outrage, just nothing.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because for you and me, living our normal daily lives, that level of coldness sounds almost monstrous.
It does.
It sounds like losing your humanity.
Right.
But is this extreme apathy actually like a biological superpower for survival?
It is completely necessary. If we look at the mechanism behind apathy, it is really just the human nervous system protecting itself.
Okay.
Because the human body simply cannot sustain a state of pure panic or intense grief for days and weeks on end.
It would just burn out.
Exactly. It requires way too much biological energy. When you are starving and freezing, your body literally cannot afford the calories needed to feel strong emotions.
Well, so it's a calorie thing.
Yeah, emotional numbing is basically an energy-saving mode. By feeling nothing, the prisoners built this protective shell so they could focus their tiny remaining amount of energy on one single task.
Staying alive for one more day.
Precisely.
Okay, I see the logic there. Shutting down your emotional reactions protects your physical body from collapsing under the stress. But if apathy is shutting off your connection to the outside world, what keeps your inner mind from just giving up entirely?
And that's the big question.
Right. The fact that prisoners could use their minds to survive a death camp completely shatters how we usually think about human limits. The book transitions from the horrors outside to this incredibly rich world inside the mind.
That is the real turning point of his observation. He noticed that the prisoners who survived the longest were not always the physically strongest men.
Right, which you would assume they would be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But often they were the people who had a rich inner life. Because they were entirely blocked from expressing themselves in the real world, they retreated inward. And the most powerful force they discovered in that inner retreat was love.
There is a specific scene where they are marching out to a work site in the dark. The wind is freezing, the guards are yelling and hitting them, and the men are stumbling in the mud.
It's a brutal scene.
And the man next to the officer whispers, "If our wives could see us now." And in that freezing darkness, the author's mind is suddenly consumed by the image of his wife.
And it isn't just a passing thought either. He creates a whole parallel reality in his mind.
Yeah.
He imagines a vivid, detailed conversation with her. He can hear her voice and see her smile. And in that moment, he has a profound realization. Love is the ultimate goal to which a human being can aspire.
Wow.
He realizes that his love is as strong as death. He didn't even know if his wife was still alive at that point, but he realized it didn't matter.
The feeling itself was enough.
Exactly. The truth of his love existed independently of her physical body, and that internal truth gave him the warmth and strength to keep walking through the freezing mud.
That is heavy. And it wasn't just love that they retreated into. It was also this desperate appreciation for beauty. But here's where it gets really interesting, because I want to push back on this a bit. We are talking about starving people who are working as slaves and might be killed at any second. How could a starving person possibly care about a beautiful sunset?
Right.
It seems like food should be the only thing on their mind.
It does seem impossible from our comfortable perspective, but the author describes a moment where the men were resting on the dirty floor of a hut, completely exhausted and famished.
Yeah.
And suddenly, another prisoner rushed in and urged them to come outside. These dying men dragged themselves out into the cold just to look at the sky.
Just for the sky.
Yeah. They saw an incredible, colorful sunset shining through the dark clouds and the barbed wire. And one of the prisoners just looked up and said, "How beautiful the world could be."
But practically speaking, how does a micro joy, like looking at a sunset or remembering a loved one, actually outweigh the agonizing physical reality of starvation?
So, to explain the mechanics of that, the psychiatrist uses a really brilliant analogy. He compares human suffering to a gas.
Like a physical gas.
Yes. If you pump a small amount of gas into an empty room, the gas expands and fills the room completely.
Okay.
If you pump a massive amount of gas into the room, it also fills the room completely.
Right.
Suffering operates the exact same way. It completely fills the human soul, whether the suffering is an enormous tragedy or just a small daily annoyance.
So because a person's suffering container is always full, the size of the problem doesn't change the feeling of being overwhelmed.
Correct. But here is the flip side of that rule. Because suffering fills the whole soul, a very small joy, a microjoy, like a colorful cloud or a brief memory, can also expand to fill the entire soul with light.
Even in a concentration camp.
Exactly. The size of the joy doesn't matter. Its ability to fill the space is what counts.
And they even used humor to fill that space.
Oh, yes.
The author actually trained his friend, who was a surgeon, to use humor as a survival tool. He told his friend to imagine a future where they were free and working in a normal hospital.
I love this part.
He said, imagine you are in the middle of a delicate surgery, and suddenly the hospital boss rushes into the operating room and yells, "Action! Action!"
Yeah.
Exactly the way the camp guards yell at us while we're digging in the dirt.
Yeah, humor is fascinating because of how it functions psychologically. It creates sudden distance.
Right.
When you can laugh at your situation, you are briefly stepping outside of it.
Yeah.
You are no longer just a victim of the circumstance. You are an observer analyzing it.
Wow.
Love, beauty, humor, these were the tools of the inner retreat that kept their minds intact.
So we have this devastating yet incredible story of how the human mind defends itself. But this brings us to the core mission of our deep dive today.
Right.
Because this extreme experience led the psychiatrist to a massive realization about human nature. If pleasure or power were our main drives, as many psychologists previously believed, these prisoners would have given up immediately.
Exactly. There was no pleasure or power to be found.
So what does their survival actually prove?
It proves that human beings are driven primarily by a will to meaning. The survival of those who kept a rich inner life shows that we need a reason to exist.
So meaning is the engine.
Yes. And he developed a whole therapy around this called logotherapy, which is essentially meaning-centered therapy. He uses a famous quote from the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche.
Oh, I know this one.
Yeah. He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow.
He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. If you know your purpose, you can endure almost any condition.
Precisely.
But let's bring this into the modern world. What happens to a person who has plenty of food, a safe place to live, and a decent income, but they do not have a why?
That person falls into what the author terms the existential vacuum.
The existential vacuum.
Yeah. It is a profound feeling of inner emptiness and a total lack of direction. You see it manifest mostly as deep boredom.
So when people feel that inner emptiness, which I think many of our listeners have experienced at some point, that's what the existential vacuum is. The book mentions something called the Sunday neurosis to explain this, right?
Yes. The Sunday neurosis is the depression people feel when the busy work week finally starts.
Oh, I've definitely felt that.
Most people have. They are rushing around from Monday to Friday, but when Sunday arrives and the distractions fade away, they're left alone with their thoughts.
And that's scary.
It is. They suddenly realize their life lacks meaningful content. Today, we might see this when someone finishes a busy week and immediately starts endlessly scrolling on their phone or binge-watching shows.
Well, yeah, doom scrolling.
Exactly. They are terrified of sitting in silence because the silence reveals the emptiness.
We're constantly trying to escape the vacuum, and the modern advice we hear everywhere is to reduce stress. We are told to avoid tension, practice self-care, and just relax.
Right, which sounds good in theory.
But the author argues that aiming for zero stress is actually terrible for our mental health. I want to use a real-world analogy to look at this.
Yeah.
Think about building an architectural arch out of stones.
Okay.
If you have an old, decrepit arch that is starting to fail, how do you make it stronger? You don't take weight off the top. You actually increase the load upon it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? The heavy weight presses the stones firmly together and stabilizes the entire structure.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. The human mind is exactly like that arch. We actually need a healthy amount of tension to hold ourselves together.
We need the weight.
We do. We don't need a tensionless state. We need the tension that exists between who we are right now and a worthwhile goal we want to achieve in the future. We need a task waiting for us.
Okay, let's get practical for the listener. We know we need meaning. We know we need a goal to create that healthy tension. But how do we actually find it? Especially if someone is listening right now and feeling completely stuck.
Well, the first step is a shift in perspective. People often ask, what is the meaning of life? As if there is one giant answer written in the sky for everyone.
Right, like a secret code.
Exactly. But the author says this is backwards. We do not ask life what the meaning is. Life asks us.
Life asks us.
Exactly. Life questions you every single day through your unique circumstances, and you answer life by being responsible.
Right.
You answer by how you choose to act in the specific situation you are in today.
So it's not about finding the meaning of life, it's about finding the meaning of this exact moment.
Yes.
The author outlines 3 clear paths to finding that meaning. Let's walk through them. What is the first path?
The first path is by creating a work or doing a deed. This is the most obvious one.
Like your job.
Right. It means finding purpose in your career, creating a piece of art, helping a neighbor, or raising a child. You are actively putting something valuable into the world.
That makes perfect sense for someone who has a passion project or, a family. But what if you lose your job? Or what if you are physically trapped, like the prisoners in the camp, and you are stripped of your ability to create anything? How do you find meaning then?
That leads directly to the second path, which is experiencing something or loving someone.
Okay.
You don't always have to do something to find meaning. You can find it by deeply appreciating nature, engaging with a beautiful piece of music, or truly loving another human being.
So taking things in rather than putting things out.
Exactly. When you love someone, you see their essential traits and their potential, and you help them realize that potential.
Okay, but let's take it a step further into the dark. What if you are facing a situation you absolutely cannot change?
Right?
Like a terrible, incurable disease or the loss of a loved one. A situation where you cannot work, and it is hard to experience any joy. Is there still a path to meaning?
Yes, and this is the third path, which is perhaps the most profound realization from the camp. The third path is the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. When you face a tragedy that you cannot change, you are challenged to change yourself.
Change yourself.
Wow, you can find deep meaning by turning your personal tragedy into a human triumph. The meaning is found in how bravely you bear your burden.
It's such an empowering framework. But the psychiatrist didn't just write philosophy. He actually developed practical clinical tools out of this.
He did.
There is a technique he created for dealing with fear and anxiety that I find fascinating. It is called paradoxical intention.
Yes, paradoxical intention. It's a method of using self-detachment and humor to cure anxiety.
How does that work?
Well, it focuses on the mechanics of fear. Often when you are terrified of something happening, that fear actually causes the event to happen.
Ah, right. The book gives a great medical example of this. There was a doctor who had a severe phobia of sweating in public.
Right.
And because he was so anxious about sweating, his nervous system would heat up, and that nervousness would actually cause him to sweat profusely. It is a terrible, vicious cycle.
So, to break that cycle, the author prescribed a totally counterintuitive therapy. He told the doctor to try to do the exact opposite of what he wanted.
The opposite.
Yeah. Instead of trying to stay dry, he was instructed to deliberately try to sweat as much as physically possible the next time he met someone.
Right. The doctor was told to think to himself, I usually sweat a little bit, but today I'm going to show everyone how I can pour 10 quarts of sweat right here in the room.
Exactly.
And the result is amazing. By trying to force the fear to happen, the fear completely vanished. He stopped sweating.
There's another case study in the book about a bookkeeper who suffered from terrible writer's cramp.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever he tried to write neatly in front of his boss, his hand shook violently. The therapy. He was told to deliberately scribble as badly as possible.
Just make a mess of it.
Yes. He was supposed to say to himself, I will show my boss what an absolute mess my handwriting can be. And the moment he consciously tried to force the bad writing, his hand relaxed and he could write normally.
It sounds completely counterintuitive. You're basically telling your brain to lean into the panic. But I can see how taking ownership of the fear removes its power over you.
Exactly.
Let's apply this for the listener right now. Let's say you have a common modern fear, like public speaking.
Very common.
You have a huge presentation tomorrow, and you are terrified. Your hands are going to shake while holding your notes.
Yeah.
How exactly do you apply paradoxical intention?
So that fear of shaking is called anticipatory anxiety. You are anticipating the failure, which causes the failure.
Okay.
To use this tool right before you walk on stage, you don't tell yourself to calm down. Instead, you say, I am going to shake so much today that the papers are going to fly out of my hand and hit the ceiling. I am going to be the absolute world champion of shaking hands.
You make a ridiculous joke out of your own fear.
Precisely. Humor gives you distance from your own mind. By intending to do the very thing you fear, you take the power away from the anxiety.
Because you're controlling it.
Right. The cycle breaks because you are no longer running away from the feeling. You are chasing it, and anxiety cannot survive being chased.
It gives you back your control in the situation.
Yeah.
Which really brings us to the final synthesis of this deep dive.
Yeah.
If we zoom out, what is the overarching message of this entire book?
The core message is a firm rejection of a concept called pandeterminism.
Okay, let's unpack that term. Pandeterminism.
It is the idea that human beings are just machines. It is the belief that we are entirely controlled by our environment, our biological instincts, or our childhood trauma.
Like we have no free will.
Exactly. But the author completely rejects this. He says we are not just helpless products of our surroundings.
Even in a concentration camp, a place where your schedule, your food, your clothing, and your physical body are entirely controlled by violent guards, he argues you still have freedom there.
Yes. The author famously observed that between what happens to you, the stimulus, and how you react to it, the response, there is a space. And in that space lies your ultimate freedom. They can take away your family, your health, and your physical liberty. But they can never take away your final human freedom, which is the choice of your own attitude in any given set of circumstances. You always choose your own way.
But freedom is only half the equation, isn't it?
It is. Freedom without responsibility is actually quite dangerous. That is why the author made a wonderful suggestion for the United States.
Oh, about the statues.
Yes. He noted that the Statue of Liberty stands on the East Coast, symbolizing freedom, but he suggested it should be supplemented by a Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast.
I love that.
Because true freedom isn't just doing whatever you want, it means taking responsibility for your choices, your attitude, and the meaning of your life.
The statue of responsibility. It perfectly balances the scale.
It really does.
We have covered so much ground today.
Yeah.
From the absolute darkest moments of human suffering and the biological reality of apathy, to the beautiful realization that love, purpose, and our own inner choices can save us.
It is a powerful message.
It is. To end this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought experiment to carry with you today.
Okay.
Imagine you are 80 years old. You are lying on your deathbed, and you are looking back at a movie of your life. And right now, you are watching the scene of your life exactly as it is today.
Wow.
Knowing what you know from that future perspective, what would you do differently right now? How would you act to make sure that the movie of your life is one you are proud to watch? What necessary tension do you need to embrace today? And what meaning is waiting for you to take responsibility for it?
That's a lot to think about.
Thank you for learning with English through ideas. If you enjoyed this podcast, subscribe for more ideas, more English, and more growth.